every single day.
People want to connect with someone who...
Self-expression is life.
It is the challenge. It's a challenge of life.
You can't get mad at other people for not seeing your vision.
It was all about a grind. Like I said, I was selling CDs, DVDs, and clothes out the trunk of my
Whatever
car.
it takes.
This is for the people. Don't forget that.
Hey everybody, Zach Cohen here, the Hustle Chronicles podcast. I have the CFO of Authority Brand, Silpa here. Thank you so much.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
If you don't mind just starting off explaining who you are and how you got into the position you're in today.
Awesome. So I joined Authority Brands. I'm their CFO in May of 2019. And I came over from PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I'd spent my career there. I thought I was going to be a partner there. Everyone was feeding me the Kool-Aid. I was drinking it. And I was actually in the media and entertainment practice. So I spent 10 years focusing on TV content, media content, advertising agencies, video game production, all kinds of things that is not franchising. And I had a break in my schedule, and the partner that I had a good relationship with asked me to fill in. And it was the tail end of Apex investing in Authority Brands back when they were just two brands, so TCA and HomeWatch. So a team had done all the diligence. I was just coming in at the back end. They needed some help on like working capital, which is just kind of deal true up. And I apparently impressed somebody. And they said, hey, can you continue on? We have 2 more deals in the pipeline. So it was pretty slow. I think I was doing some stuff for Spotify, actually. And so I said, okay. And then I managed to impress them again. And then it was kind of back to back. We bought ASP in October. Mosquito Squad started and ended in December. That was a carve out from a company. And then just before Christmas, we got a call that Apex was pining over some trade brands that were part of a public company in the UK. And they gave us a little bit of lead time. The partner said, enjoy Christmas. Let's see what happens. We kicked off January, probably like second week. And this was a carve out of a huge public company. It was a hot mess of a deal. We signed
like all great deals.
Like all great deals. We signed it February 21st. So that was a hyper speed rail to a deal signing. And about maybe a week or two later, I got a call from the partner that said, hey, is everything okay? Because Apex just called Martin, who was our kind of senior relationship partner over the Apex portfolio, but also PwC's CFO. And he's like, I don't know what they want to talk to them about, but your name came up. Wow. And I was like, I promise I didn't do anything. Like, we had shifts overnight before the deal signed. Like, we were on the call negotiating SPA. I'm like, I promise. And then I was like on my way to brunch, and I was texting the partner, like, is everything okay? Like, I'm shitting the bed because I think this is like kind of the year I'm supposed to go into partner track. I can't mess anything up. And he tells me, well, they've just asked Martin if they could kind of recruit you. Wow. And they're trying to give him a heads up out of respect. So that was really interesting. I didn't know what the role was going to be. And we also were at the time, I don't know if I can say this, but looking at a very large other franchise company for Apex that would have like quadrupled their size. Wow. And they had a stellar team already. So I was thinking, well, where do I even fit in, especially if we do this deal? So I was kind of like, okay, I'll see. And then over the course of like a week, I got courted a little bit. Probably nobody doesn't court, super fancily, but the Apex team is wonderful. Yeah. And so they made me the offer, and it took me a really long time. I took 5 weeks to respond. Wow. So I did not come super easily, but they were so patient with me. I mean, they knew what I was giving up. Right. And it was I worked my whole career for that. And then I kind of one day just like, this is super morbid, but I tell a lot of people this. Ultimately, what helped me make my decision, and all my partners were so supportive, and they all gave me their advice on like different opportunities that came their way, why they said no. And I just sort of came to this point where I said, if I die in a year, which again, this is like the morbid part.
You're talking to a very morbid person, so don't worry about that.
But if I die in a year, like what am I going to feel
What's your kind of legacy be?
best about doing in this last year? And I kind of saw the writing on the wall in terms of partnership. I knew what to expect. I knew what I was going to be doing. And so I said yes. And I knew the biggest thing, the like humongous thing that I gave up was the people. Like, as we were talking about before we kicked off the podcast, you know, a few of my old coworkers, and it's just such an incredible team, especially in the deals practice at PwC. Like, I have never, and I'll say this, but I don't mean it in a bad way, but I've never worked with so many smart people in my entire life. And I am probably just now finding my tribe within Authority Brands of like those people among the leadership team. And it just in a place like, especially in the deals practice at PwC, you're just gunning 24/7 on projects. So you see what people are made of really quickly, and you see their caliber. You're in the trenches. You like, you know, the joke at PwC is like, these people are going to be at your wedding, and you're like, yeah, whatever. Right. But they are. Like, if I get married, there's a list of people from PwC who are coming. And that takes longer to find an industry because you're not battling something every day. So it took definitely a few more years to build here. But anyway, that's the piece that I gave up. That's a long way to tell you how I got here. But
that makes a lot of sense. And I'm an accounting nerd too. So I know all of the accounting nerds, especially in like the New York City metro area. I'm guessing that's where you were at PwC. Yeah. Silpa also lived in Long Island City, so shout out to Long Island City.
I was an early settler.
You were before my wife and I moved there, and now it's like where the Amazon HQ2 was supposed to go.
Yeah.
But anyways, when the deal went down, the first thing that happened was like everyone was like, "Oh my God, you get to work with Silpa." And it's so funny because when you come from the accounting world, the merger and acquisition world, people don't always feel the same way, and everyone expressed how amazing of a personality you are, but also just level-headed, and like you really led from behind, right? Which is really the only way to be successful in a place where people are coming and going so much, just because the stress level is at an all-time high. You're dealing with billions of dollars. You're dealing with so much at stake with every single deal. I mean, my own personal experience of being acquired by Authority Brands, it was so stressful.
Yeah. Oh my God. I can imagine. Yeah.
Thinking about how you guys from 2019 went from 2 brands to now you guys have 15 brands. Am I right?
Yep.
Like, what comes to mind in terms of all of these acquisitions?
The first few were the hardest, and the trade brands, the purchase of the Clockwork portfolio was, so stepping back just like for 2 seconds, when I took the job, the running joke in my family was that deal is like what almost broke me. Like, I was like, I don't think I can make it this next year. Like, this is like, I'm done. There's like a story of, I was in Vail to snowboard, but like we're in the middle of the deal, and my partner calls me and he's like, you are the closest one to working capital. They want to get on the phone and negotiate it right now. Like, you need to jump on. I'm like, I'm on a ski lift. And he's like, I just need 10 minutes. So I hop off the lift. I'm with my cousin. And I'm like, can you just hold on for a second? I'm at the top of the slope. Oh, I do blue slopes. I'm not a good snowboarder, but whatever. And I'm on the phone. My hands are like starting to freeze. And I'm just like being a little bitey about like, this is what it is. And I don't even have anything in front of me. So I'm like trying to go off memory. It was a disaster. And it worked out fine because it was like ingrained in my head. So I had enough ammo. But it was like, I can't even have a moment to just get my butt down the slope to do this. And so that deal, because it was a carve out, basically forced us to build an infrastructure at AB that we didn't have. Supporting 2 brands is so different than supporting a portfolio that came with 500 technicians across the retail stores, plus 3 franchise brands, plus a software company, and then a procurement organization. So a lot of things we weren't, other than franchising up to that point. And so that was hard. Like, when I joined, the team was like 6-ish people, like 5 full-time, 1 contractor. and almost no one other than my star AP person who's still with us, and my VP, Ashley, who you know really well, who's still with us.
One of the hardest working people.
She's tremendous. Yeah. Made it. And I had to then rebuild from the two of them to my team now is 32.
Wow.
And that was hard. It was Leanne and I, who's the EVP of the indoor brands and the former head of TCA, were talking last night about just kind of reminiscing that her and I had a lot of tension in the early days, and me and Heather, because they were used to a company whose sole focus was their prized possession, which was TCA, and it is a prized possession. And then came this big portfolio that needed like overnight support because they had nothing. We got very few employees except the on-the-ground technicians, and we had to build a legal department overnight, an HR department overnight, a finance department overnight. And so we closed the deal. We signed in February, closed April 30th. I started May 6th. And by September, we were off the transition services agreement we had, which basically leaned on the old company to just do the day-to-day. We had to launch an ERP. So we set up NetSuite, did all and we had incredible partners for all of this. Like none of this was done by me, obviously, myself and I, but it was, we joke now, like it was a battlefield. It was a battlefield against priorities and hearing in the moment, I would say I was not super receptive to the feedback of what about us? Yep. And it's so funny I told Leanne last night is I learned so much from you about what it meant to be an operator, right? Especially from the franchise side, because I'm coming in as a consultant. Consultants are they're just know-it-alls. It's part of the DNA, right? Totally. Yeah. And I had a super preconceived notion of what I would come and do at Authority Brands. And because I had the benefit of doing the diligence on all the companies, I already knew, I had the whole list in my head of what needed to get done. And I got there and I was like, oh shit, I don't know how to do. There were things hey, we need to pivot this payment processor. And I'm like, I don't even know how to hook up a new payment processor. Okay, I'm going to call somebody. And that is where my, being able to leverage the resources at PwC was incredible because no one there wanted to see me fail. Yep. So I was getting phone calls are you okay? And I'm like, I have this problem. Do you know anyone who can help me? And they were like, we got a guy, we'll just talk to them, right? And that was tremendous. I would not have been able to... So anyway, what comes to mind is a battlefield, but also just looking back how far we've come and how much we've built. Heather's team is the same way. I think she had 3 people. I don't even know how many people we have on the marketing team, but it is probably 75. Yeah, I think so. It's just it's crazy. And Jordan, who's our, head of Fran Dev, was sitting down with me a few days ago and was like, do you ever sit back and just think about what you said? You were 2 and you went to 15. And I was like, no, I have PTSD amnesia. So I don't even think about I don't think very often about what it took to get here. I'm very proud to see where we are.
Yeah.
But that battlefield, I was mentioning before, is what makes the glue between us as an executive team so strong. I will go to bat for any of them any day. And they are incredibly smart and I've learned so much from them. So
that's such a great story. You're basically an entrepreneur.
I don't know about that.
Well, just
that's
hearing,
a different beast.
Yeah, but just hearing what you're talking about, everyone now is okay, you're successful. You've successfully sold your company. Now you're working for a private equity firm. For my own experience, but
yeah,
I can hear the pain and passion in you talking about that experience. But as time goes on, it's almost you look back and you're like, I cannot believe not only we survived it, but we thrived during it, right? And it made us stronger. So now, right, let's fast forward to where we are today. Yeah. What do you feel like the future brings for the brand?
I think So when we were going through a recent cap raise, we were talking to prospective investors about just kind of how the machine works, right? What's the focus of the corporate team? What opportunities do we see? And in going through that, it was such a good exercise because I think between Heather, myself, and, our old CEO, Rob, which a lot of that was already in the works, and then transitioning Craig in, it became very clear how much opportunity we have not even started to squeeze the juice from, right? It's just like we hired, a new SVP of call center. Like there's just, and there was a session today about ramping your business and how important it is to pick up the phone. And it's like, we know an opportunity we haven't even really tried to tap yet, right? We coach through it. Yeah. We tell people pick up the phone. We tell them how important it is, but to actually put a really seasoned guy behind it and invest in infrastructure to support it, that's one. I think now we've put a lot of pieces together. We have a good playbook of like how we integrate businesses and how we want to move them from kind of how they've grown under a single person of ownership to, we call it lighter fluid, right? Putting the AB lighter fluid on it and trying to get it to really this high scale, high performing, kind of uncomfortable probably place especially for an owner who's built it with their bare hands. But there's just so much opportunity. So I think of this next phase as kind of lighter fluid phase for all the brands we bought, honestly, post Clockwork. If I think about the brands we bought, everything from the restoration in 2020 to Duty Calls to our emerging brand portfolio, which was brand new for us, right? Like we're still kind of proving to ourselves that we know how to grow a brand from like zero to something. And that is a different beast than nurturing and extracting value from a mature brand or even a medium mature brand, right? It's like the holes are there and you know what you need to plug, but a new one is like, it's a lot of testing. So I do not think that we have tapped into like the level of energy we had to put into the Clockwork brands because we were forced to. We haven't had the ability to do on some of these more recent brands because they've just kind of been back to back and we're still trying to catch up to the pipeline of things that we need to do. So I think our future is a lot of lighter fluid on call center, marketing, everything through the supply chain, the value chain, and technology.
It's pretty amazing. I think when you think about an older, mature brand, right? A lot of times they're thinking, okay, we've tapped the potential. Now, how do we become more profitable, right? And when you're talking, you can hear the passion behind like, we're not even close to the ceiling, right? Like we're still, on that growth projection, and it's just so exciting, right? Because it's like, we're going to pivot, we're going to figure out how to make it work. And then when we get up there, it's like, then we can figure out what's next, right?
Totally. I think the things that we have been talking about recently too are things that I never even thought about 5 years ago, right? It's just like that wasn't even on my radar as an opportunity to create value.
Yeah, and when we were talking before, I was like, we've talked to so many different types of brand presidents, and one thing that Roger and I started seeing is like everyone has started to mingle together, right? Like we were talking to Dave, and now Dave is helping out with the other brands. We were talking to Jimmy. Jimmy's ASP's president has moved on to helping out with emerging brands. And then we talked to Rob Palmer, and then we connected that he's part of the incubator part of 40 brands. It's like, I've only been here for less than a year, but now that you start to see, right? Even with my own experience, it's like, there is so much opportunity myself, my employees. There's just, when you talk about a company of this size with so many different types of experience, there's really, it could be whatever you want it to be.
100%. I was just talking to another one of our corporate owned portfolio presidents, and he was saying the same thing. He's like, I tell my guys, right, the guys that run the location, that this is a long-term play. Like, do your thing here, do a good job. You're gonna make good money, but this is not the ceiling for you, right? Like this company is going to be 20 brands, 25 brands. They're going to launch something we haven't even thought of. Yeah. And you've got endless opportunities of where you want to go. I tell that to everyone we recruit as well on our team. It's like, our team is super straightforward, and the idea of I want everyone walking in the door to know what they're walking into. So I always tell people, if you want highly structured, you know what you're going to get 9 to 5, most of our roles can't offer that, right? Because I ask my team to be super agile. Zach texts you and says, I have a problem. You figure out how to help him, right? And our books have to be right. Our processes have to be tight. And, you get pulled in a lot of different things. But you guys will learn so much. And that's how, obviously, I went through the machine of PwC, which had tremendous training, options. So ours are a little bit more grassroots. Right. But it's that is what prepared me for this in a way that I didn't even know I was prepared. And I have another colleague who recently left as a partner to go work in industry. And he was like, I just realized how smart I was. Or like, I just realized how well trained I was. He was like, I never knew I could do this. Right. And like, that's what I want to provide to my team. It's like, wherever you go, because you probably won't die with authority brands, which is fine. I want you to go out there and just like kill it, like be a killer. So, I love it. And not in a murderous way, but
not a murderous way at all. We were talking about before how there's so much opportunity. Like, what are you looking for? If someone is listening right now and they're interested in joining, like, what roles are we looking to fill?
Like literally everywhere, everywhere. So I think this is my, Silpa perspective, not company perspective. So what I have learned, because I've never had to recruit people myself until I got here, is that if I could hire just on 2 things, if I could interview on 2 things only and figure out how to find it, it's curiosity and it's accountability. That's all that matters. Like, I can teach you debits and credits, right? I can teach you how to learn formulas in Excel. But if you're not curious, you're never going to be that killer. And if you're not highly accountable, I will always have to watch your back. And I think everyone in the organization respects those 2 qualities. And everyone in the organization that's thriving has those 2 qualities. And so I totally agree. That's personally for me on our accounting and finance team. But I just think if you have those 2 qualities, there's a role for you at AB. But we're building out our technology team. Technology is a huge area we're going to be investing in. We're trying to kind of, really dig into the data analytics side. And a lot of that right now has been outsourced, and we really want to bring that in-house. So I think that's a big area. Software, like we've developed. When I joined, TCA was the only brand that had a homegrown software that we developed it in-house. We now have 4 homegrown softwares. And then obviously we acquired, a software company with a trade brand. So it's just, I think our identity is changing, which means there's constant need for more talent.
It's amazing. When you think about how important your role is, how much responsibility you have, how do you balance it, right? So you can continue to excel at this level. And I know that's a loaded question. I know you're a complete overachiever. You wouldn't have been able to be here unless you're an overachiever. So I get that. And I'm sure you want more balance in your life, right? But what do you do for yourself to make it so you can keep achieving?
I think I've had to learn to trust and delegate. So I'm definitely someone that likes to touch everything. And so that is counterintuitive to balance. But I think the other thing that I've realized is and again, my experience is unique because I came from consulting. And so when we were done with the project, I use every day of my vacation. I got paid out nothing in leftover vacation when I left, but that is how I recharge. So I would get off a really hard deal and take 2 weeks. And I almost always left the country. I just needed to be truly out of sight, out of mind. And I would go sometimes really weird places that are not high on people's vacations list, but just to reset myself, right? See something completely different and come back kind of just grounded. So when I came to this job, I just felt like I could never leave because there was always something. And then COVID hit, right? COVID came like 6 months after I joined. So I didn't have a ton of time, or I guess 9 months after I joined. But about in 2021, I think I took my first sort of longer vacation and just found a way to balance being remote and a couple of days while I'm out, but not feeling like I couldn't leave just because I needed to be online 3 days of a 10-day trip or something. So that's one, but it definitely comes down to hiring the right people and candidly just learning when maybe someone on the team is no longer serving the season. And that is another thing that's been really hard for me to learn, but I've come to learn it, that it does that person a disservice to drag them along, and it does us a disservice and the team a disservice to, be carrying weight. And it's just what we're trying to do is like nothing short of impossible. Right. You know it. I'm sure you see it when you're like, okay, I got to hit that number. What are we going to do? So you have to have a killer team to support you. Right. And so that's been a big part of finding balance, is trusting, building the right team, and just drawing boundaries, honestly, because the work is always going to be there. It's never going to end. And you have to just say, I'm out. I'll be back in 3 days.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, there's a lot of times where, okay, like my team has been used to the way that Zach does it, right? So it's like so many changes have happened in our retail locations where it's like, now they're like, what's going on, right? And I have to remind them, like, relax. They're talking to 15 businesses, 15 completely different services. We will get to it, right? The best we can do is the best we can do right now in the junk luggers, right? So yeah. I'm hearing a lot of that with what you're talking about, and something that I honestly really appreciate working with you is when someone isn't working, the culture eats them up and spits them out, right? Like a lot of times people have come on, we've made a lot of mistakes in the past, both in the retail locations and on the corporate side, where we try to bring in a killer, right? Mm-hmm. And then they would come in and they wouldn't be a good fit, right? And they would say like, what do I do? And it's like, you're going to figure it out, or like the team is going to figure it out for you. And I think that is so refreshing to see when I think about your team, because, having an accounting background, your team comes a lot to me, right? Because I'm able to answer the questions from. So I'm close with Ashley. I've become close with Christy now, who Christy Pugh is amazing. Anthony, like the team is they're a bunch of killers. And I think that to me is refreshing, because for the last 10 years, it's been me. We had Josh Krisher, but that was our accounting team. Yeah. So when we're talking to franchisees and they wanted to know about accounting, I was their guy. So I think that when I see that mentality, it almost is reinvigorating to me, because it's like, sorry, you were about to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, that's
no, but it's true, because it's like, it makes you excited for what the future brings again.
Yeah. I think passion breeds passion a little bit, right? It's like, it's the same thing. I mean, I remember one thing that really stands out to me is like, you will have something personal going on and you're like, I'm going to be out and I'm thinking it's like 2 weeks, and you're like, I'm going to be out for 4 days. And I'm like, what the, okay.
So I talked to Silpa right before I got my last surgery, and I was like, I'll be back online in 3 days. And she's like, you just told me you're going to be in the hospital for 7 days. And I was like, yeah, I'll be in the hospital, but the anesthesia will wear off, and I'll have my wife's bring my laptop in a couple of days. When I talk to outsiders, they're like, that's incredible that you were able to sell and create this financial security for your family. But then, I come to a conference like this and I meet a brand that's doing 6 times the amount in a random location in America. And you just, 1 hour later, I've been talking to this guy and I'm like, this isn't, you know what I mean? Can I call you later and ask you more questions? Because clearly you guys have more systems and processes than I've ever even thought of. And we're in New York City.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the value of things like an annual convention, which is like, oh, I don't have time for it. I have a business to run. It's like B school. It's the networking, right? You learn from your co-owners. You meet people who are in your area, especially when you're like 15 brands and we're growing. It's just those conversations. I mean, I think the content is great, but hands down the conversations, right? It's who you meet, who you learn from. I learned from franchisees. I was sitting down trying to do some work earlier, and our Mount Airy franchisee was just trying to sit down by himself and have a beer and just asked, do you mind if I sit here? And I said, no, but where are you from? Right. And just sort of asked him. And he's really close to our office, and we're talking, and he's talking about how he was the manager and the owner joined later, but he's like, the old owner just always wanted to touch everything. And then we could never get past 2 billion. Right. And then when they got out of our way and, COVID was our blessing, we figured out a new way to work. And he was like, we jumped from like 2 to 7 in 2 years, and they're going to clear almost 10 million this year. And they are in Mount Airy, Maryland, right? They're doing heating and plumbing. And, as a plug, I asked, don't you want to do restoration too? Yeah. Lots of our franchisors are doing it. And he's like, listen, this is our last hurrah. We don't want to launch a new business, but it's, I was really inspired. And then he kind of closed it with like, why don't you get your team to come over and do a ride around, learn about how we operate the business? And I'm like, absolutely. Yep. They need to. That's how I learned. Yeah. So.
If you could have a billboard anywhere in the world, what would it say and why?
This is going to be really weird, but.
Love weird. So.
When he said it, the first thing I thought about is like, I really want my family to have a food truck. And I want the food truck to be like, I'm Indian, so a spin on Indian food. And I always thought it should be called Spicy In, Spicy Out. I have heard from people that might not get a lot of visitors.
No way. That would do awesome.
Because they're like, we don't want that. But that would be my billboard, Spicy In.
Is it called Chef? Is that the food truck movie that I'm thinking of?
Oh, I think that was one. I don't remember.
If I'm Roger, you'll put in the name of the right movie because I think I just botched it. But there's a food truck movie that I feel like ever since I watched it, I'm like, I could do that, And he travels all across America making like different types of tacos.
Oh.
I'm blanking on the guy's name.
Okay.
John Favre. Oh, just cut this out, Roger, because clearly I don't know what I'm talking about. All right. If people want to get in touch with you, if people are interested in joining Authority Brands, first, how do they get in touch with you? Second, how would they reach out to join the team?
I'm on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. My face will be there. It'll be a little bit skinnier. But always open to inbound messages. That's the best place to reach me. And then candidly, our job postings page on LinkedIn is super active. And even if you don't find something that's on there that fits you, respond to the closest thing, respond to a random one, and our recruiting team will receive it. And they will farm it no matter what it is. So, and we need people, definitely in accounting, always, but across the board. I think sometimes we don't even know what we need. I agree. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's absolutely. Like, I feel like a resume will come in and I'll be like, I'll find a spot. Yeah. You'll find a spot for good talent.
You're not hiring for skills. You're hiring for the personality and the person. We could teach you what you need to know.
Yes, 100%.
Have any questions for me?
I do. So I know that I've heard from other companies that we bought that kind of the AB effect is what they call it, right? I used to run my own business, then I came into this big AB and stuff's kind of all over the place. What has been your biggest AB effect? And what's the silver lining you found going from really owning and running something by yourself to then doing it with a big partner?
Yeah. Well, the first one is easy, right? I spent the last 15 years gaining people's trust, right? Like when you think about New York City alone, during a busy season, we could have 100 people working with us. Then you think about their families. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of people are relying on me day in, day out, get up. Doesn't matter if I have cancer. It doesn't matter if I'm sick. Whatever it is, I know that I have to bust my ass and I have to do better than the day before, right? So when I think about that, and as soon as we were acquired, the first thing that everyone wants to know, literally, like, no one was saying to me, congratulations on your financial success. They are saying, what does this mean for me, right? And I spent a week, and that is not exaggeration. Roger can attest to it, a week. And I, just as patient as you are, I spent as long as I needed to in person, on the phone, whatever it took. Not only my employees, their wives, vendors, right? Like, you name it, talking to them and promising them. And this is the truth.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay. I'm going to make sure that not only are you secure, your position secure, but they understand how valuable you are to the team, because you would have never been here. You know me well enough by this point that I would have never allowed someone to be part of the team. Yeah. When you're talking about a business our size, we have no room
Yes.
for someone who's not going to achieve what they know their value has to be. So that was definitely the AB effect. And as you can see, 10 months later, we really have lost no one, because they trust me and they trust AB. And I'll go to bat as many times as I need to. And it's like, things will change, right? We've changed payroll companies twice.
Oh, yeah.
After leaving ADP. And listen, like, headaches happen, right? But like, when the chief human resource officer or the chief financial officer will talk to anyone in the company, whether you're a lugger, whether you're the bookkeeper, it doesn't matter who it is. And you'll explain, listen, I fucked up. I'm sorry. We will make sure it's right, not only for the past, but for the future. That says a lot. And that is the mentality, is the reason that they've always trusted me. So I think that is the reason that everyone will continue to work just as hard as they've been working. You know, I hired Daryl in a Starbucks in the Upper West Side on Monday morning at 6 a.m. because we took on a job very similar to what you're talking about. We went from basically 2 companies to 15 companies. We took a job at 50 Exchange Place. It was 100 truckloads, and I had 9 employees.
Oh my God.
So I was hiring guys at a Starbucks at 6 a.m. and telling them, you got boots? Let's go. You'll jump in the truck right now. So, and now Daryl's our director of operations. So things like that, people don't forget, and you can't make that shit up, right?
No.
Like I know everything about him. I know everything about his family, his kids, and he knows everything about me, right? So that is the reason that people want to work for me, for Authority Brands, and for whatever brand is out there. Because it's, you know, it's not just me that's working this hard. You go downstairs, there's 1,800 people there, and I guarantee 1,700 of them are people that never really did well in college, but have this chip on their shoulder that they want to build a legacy for their family. And it's really inspiring.
I 100% agree with that. I think it's, yeah, you walk downstairs and it's just like people from all walks of life.
Yep. It's amazing. That wraps up the episode. Thank you so much. I know how busy you are, especially this weekend, talking to everyone. So I appreciate you. Follow us, the Hustle Chronicles podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Silpa, thank you so much. And we appreciate everyone watching.
Thank you.